Hi, my name's Molly. I am really nervous filming. This is my first video on YouTube. I've already tried about 50 times to start the recording. I've got the craziest setup that you've ever seen. And yeah, so I'm just going to start because I'm just going to keep rambling. Okay, so um, you might have seen from the oh god, sorry. Okay. Right, we'll start again. So, hi, my name's Molly. This is my first video on YouTube, and I am going to be talking about OCD. Now, that stands for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. I just want to say, if at any point I'm looking over here or down here, it's because over there I've got a mirror set up so that I can see to make sure I'm in the shot, and down here I've got some notes of what I want to talk about. The reason that I'm making this video is basically I have OCD, and I do actually have some other experience with mental health, we'll say it like that. And I know that when I was, just getting diagnosed, it took quite a lot of appointments and wrong diagnosis, and that's not even a word, the wrong diagnosis, before I really, before people realised that it was OCD that I had. And even then, the information out there, although you can go on the internet now, even back when I was diagnosed, which was when I was around 7 or 8, and I'm 24 now, recently, I keep forgetting, I keep saying 23, 24, and there wasn't that much information about, from just normal, not normal, no one's normal really, are they? Well, especially I'm not, as you can probably tell. So yeah, there wasn't really any information or videos out there from people that I could really relate to, going in depth into OCD, and I think OCD is massively misunderstood. The misconceptions that are out there and the stereotypes really do harm people who are suffering, and the experiences that they go through, and also getting diagnosed. So yeah, I just basically wanted to start this video, you can, if you've made it this far, to talk about what OCD is. I want to start making actually, I'll go into that later. Let's just start with, first of all, why you've clicked on this video. So what is OCD? Now, I did write down the technical, well, would you say technical? Well, the blanket statement that describes OCD. So the blanket statement is OCD is a condition, a mental health condition where you have reoccurring repetitive behaviours that you cannot control. So that is the blanket statement of what OCD is. But like all mental health disorders, obviously it's far, far, far more complicated. I do think it's probably one of, I don't want to say one of the most complicated, because that's kind of putting down other conditions. I'm just going to quiet myself. Sorry. I'd like to say I do like Disney. I'm not the biggest Disney fan though. I like Disney. I love Disney films. I love the feel of Disney. But I'm not like a mad crazy fan. I know there's some fans that really stan for Disney. I just love mugs. That's me. Lots and lots of mugs. I'm gonna try not to swear because I know that annoys people. Yeah, anyway, so I forgot where I was now. This is all. So yeah, so I don't want to say it's the most complicated. I know that there's all all mental health conditions are complicated in different ways, but it is a very complex condition, and because no two sufferers will have the same experience. So even so, because there's also multiple um, OCD diagnoses. People can have multiple. Someone who has the exact same diagnosis could have completely different, or will have completely different symptoms. Nobody's the same, and I think that's one of the things that makes it complicated, but also makes it hard to find out that you will get a diagnosis. So who can it affect? OCD can affect anyone of any age. They do think that women are, there's a higher chance, there's a higher amount of women who suffer than men, but no two genders are actually, um, but no two, all genders. So all genders are affected, and they, even though they do say that it tends to affect women more, it can just be that not all um, men may not be as forthcoming as getting a diagnosis, um, going to the doctors or wanting to talk about what is wrong, or talk about or admit that they're having these problems or thoughts. So they do think it could also be down to that as well. But yeah, it definitely affects all genders. Also, they do say, sorry, I'm just checking down to my notes. So normally they believe people who've got OCD are typically diagnosed by the age of 19. However, it can occur where people from up to the age of 35 and onwards are diagnosed, but they do expect people to have been diagnosed before they turn 19. Obviously, that doesn't always happen, um, but that's what they think. That's the statistic that I've seen. Um, so what I want to talk about really today is I've probably said what I'm going to talk about today is OCD. Now, I want to just give a bit of background first of all on my OCD. I do suffer with OCD. I'm not just some person that is obsessed with talking about it or saying it. Write down in the comments how many times I say OCD in this clip video. Right, I'm calm. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with OCD, how I was diagnosed, how long it took, and then we can go, I think, a bit more into particular topics in another video. But this will just give you a little bit of an idea of my story, what I've experienced, and also some of the signs. I think you say signs or symptoms or behaviours of OCD. So again, I've got my notes down, so sorry if I'm looking. So like I said, I believe that my OCD started when I was around 6 or 7. It could have been earlier, but that's when I remember it. And it did start off with little things that weren't necessarily something that people would be worried about. So I remember I became obsessed with things hanging over the edge. So we had like I always remember a square like coffee table, and my mum always used to put the 4 coasters, they were like red coasters, on the end, like in the corner of each one. Um, but if it like tilted slightly over, I would just lose it. So they'd have to be, because it was a rectangular coffee table, they'd have to be exactly lined up with the corners, if that makes sense. And I used to probably fix them 20 times a day. People would knock them when they walked past, and I just couldn't cope with it. So I think people thought that was a bit odd, but I think they just thought that might have just been a little bit of a odd thing that I did that I'd grow out of. And then But I don't remember whether I had any thoughts at that time. I've just realised I've yeah, just realised I didn't actually no, okay, this is fine. I just want to say I haven't really gone into properly what OCD is. I've just give you the blanket statement and who it affects, but I'll talk about my experiences first just because that's what I know best, and then we can go from there. Sorry if you're waffling a bit there, or I keep looking. I need to stop looking in the mirror. Yeah, so I don't remember if I was having any thoughts, like intrusive thoughts then, but I just definitely know that there was just a reason inside that I couldn't cope with the things that I couldn't cope with. So there was the coasters over the side, and then it became anything over the side. Then it was drawers if they were like slightly open. I couldn't cope with that. But it wasn't. I know that there'll be people that'll say, "Oh, I don't like that either," or "Oh, that makes me uncomfortable." But unless you've experienced OCD, there's a difference between OCD and not really liking something and not genuinely being able to cope. It would send me into meltdown if the cupboard door was slightly open. And there was no reason for it. And then I always remember our living room door used to make like a creaking sound um, when it clicks shut. So it's a specific sound when the actual door was completely shut. You could close it and it would look closed and it would be fine, but I had to hear the clicking sound, and it got to the point where because I've never been a great sleeper, but it would get to the point where I would be laying in bed, it would be 1 o'clock in the morning, and my mum and dad would still be downstairs, and then one of them would come up and go to the toilet and they'd go back down, and they'd close over the door, but it wouldn't make the click, and I'd be screaming down the stairs for them to click the door shut, I know that did drive them insane. They didn't really understand it. They thought I was just being stupid, I think. But yeah, it would keep me up because I'd be terrified that if I didn't stay up, they would leave the door unclicked. Is this still? Yeah, that's fine. There was that. They're some of my earliest memories. Another thing, which is still one of my main, I'd say obsessions. It's actually quite hard for me to say it. I am scared of sick. I don't like saying the words, don't like talking about it. If I am, when I say scared, it's not so much like, oh, I like a jump, like a boo. I just said boo. I know what I meant. Yeah, so it's more becoming obsessed with the idea that I might be getting sick. But it's not just getting a cold. I can get a cold, doesn't bother me. I can take pain, really, I don't mind, like, I was going to say I don't mind pain, but I can handle pain fine. It's the idea that I will actually vomit. That is what I became obsessed with. And I'd call it like the first thing that really started being noticed. I couldn't be around anybody that was that I knew had been sick, which you'd think, well, that's normal. No one wants to catch a sickness. But then I would be this is when you've got to think I was like 8, 9. If somebody looked a bit off to me, so they probably look fine, but if I thought somebody looked slightly off, I would convince myself that they might be sick. I remember once that my dad had said something about my little sister always not being hungry before she got ill, and it was just a throwaway comment that he'd said to a friend or family member. So if my sister ever said that she wasn't hungry, I would obsess over the fact that I thought she was sick. I would be um, washing my hands, wiping down surfaces, wouldn't let her breathe anywhere near me, otherwise I would just lose it completely. Um, and that's when the compulsions started having an actual root rather than just me doing strange things. So I would count in my head. I would say things over and over again to myself to try to counteract the sickness that I thought was inevitably coming. Um, I would tap things. Um, it became this huge thing, um, to the point where it ended up pretty much taking over my life completely. Um, I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to be around people. When I was around people, it's all I was thinking about. It's quite ironic, but I would fake sickness to not have to go to school so that I wouldn't get sick. Yeah, yeah, I know. So I would, if I felt warm, I'd be convinced I had a temperature, and this was all from a really young age. And then if somebody actually was sick, I just couldn't cope, and then I'd be convinced that I'd breathed in particles. I remember like times when I'd be walking down the street and I'd walk past sick and I'd hold my breath. You know, sometimes when they're sick in the street, I know, it's gross, but I'd hold my breath not because I didn't want to smell it, but because I would be convinced that I was going to breathe it in, and then I couldn't forget about it. So if I had seen the sick on the floor, that would ruin my whole day. The next day, wouldn't be able to sleep. The whole time I would be looking for signs that I had obviously caught the sickness, and was going to be sick. And so then I wasn't sleeping. Um, Obviously, when you're in school at that age, everybody's sick all the time. Um, so this was just a constant battle. Um, and I was quite unhappy. Um, but all through this went on all through, I'd say, little school. And it was never, nobody actually thought that I had. I don't think my parents thought that I had an illness. I think they just thought maybe it was just a phobia. I would grow out of it. It was me being a bit dramatic, and I'd say selfish at times. And I do feel bad now sometimes thinking back, because it can come across as quite selfish. If somebody's sick, you're supposed to give them sympathy, whereas I combat it with fear, anger, upset, and I could be quite nasty in the moment of uh, the I was basically terrified, um, and it's not just in that moment, it's the ongoing effects of the constant thinking, oh my god, I've been around the sick. So then that's where my compulsion came in. So then I was constantly doing things to counteract the possibility of getting sick, if that makes sense. Because with OCD, a lot of the time with the triggering, there's the trigger, which in my case was the sickness, and then there's the intrusive thoughts. In this case, it was thinking that I was going to get sick, and then the compulsions are the things that you feel that OCD makes you believe you have no choice but to do, to prevent the trigger, um, if that makes sense. Now that's just in simple terms, and I will I'll do a full my story video going more in depth, because even though that was the case then, my OCD, which like many others, and I think most people with OCD know, OCD has a way of changing and manifesting. So what you might have suffered, what you were suffering through OCD initially, or when you were younger, will change and grow into something else, or it'll just add more symptoms, more problems on top of that. So like I said before, I still do to this day struggle with sick. I still can't believe that I have said it so many times in this video, and I still will probably say some, I will say things in my head to undo the fact that I've talked about it in this video, even though I am a logical person. I am sitting here explaining to you, oh, sorry, I'm sitting here explaining to you what OCD is. Yeah, I'm still going to do that, and I'll have to be completely honest. I will still say things in my head to undo the fact that I've talked about the sick, and that's just OCD. In a nutshell, you know the facts, yet you still can't fight. It is hard to explain, but what I would say as well, just so that this doesn't sound like a complete, like OCD is completely hopeless, there's a lot of improvement that I have gone through as well. I'd say the OCD is always there. There's certain things that I do today that I have done all my life, and I probably am going to do for the rest of my life. But it's also, I'm at a point at the moment where it's manageable. I do go through what I call relapses of OCD, where it can get really bad. But I've had therapies, I've had CBD, um, training, CBT training, not CBD. CBT is a different thing. I've had CBT training a couple of times and learnt a lot of skills from that, and also medication. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking medication. I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of if you need to take medication. A mental health condition is just as serious, if and sometimes more serious than a physical condition, and it can also manifest physically also, which is something else that I'll talk about in future videos. So yeah, so where was I before? I ramble a lot. And yeah, so let me just stop. Yeah, so oh, see, um, so I was diagnosed when I was around 13, I think. Um, but I'd had a misdiagnosis before that, and there was a lot that happened in between when my symptoms began and when I got the actual diagnosis, and then a lot that's happened since. So just for a bit of the way it's gone, but I am 24, so obviously started getting the symptoms from when I can remember of being around 6 and 24 now, and that's a lot of years, a lot of changes, a lot of traumatic events. I don't know why I said quotations, they were actually dramatic, but no, they were traumatic, but I don't want to be dramatic is what I was trying to say. Probably said it right really the first time. So yeah, so basically, in simple terms, like I was saying before, OCD tends to be, you have the trigger, you have the intrusive thoughts, and you have the compulsions. However, the severity and also the types of compulsions, the type of intrusive thoughts, completely differ person to person. I have had other significantly difficult intrusive thoughts to deal with, as many people probably have, but it really doesn't matter how significantly the thoughts, it doesn't really matter how bad the thoughts are in terms of how people view them, and more how you view them yourself. I always think, just because I'd never say my OCD was worse than their OCD, because they only do this, or they only think this, or they only have to do this, because it depends how it feels to that person, not what it actually is. It's always relative to the person, I think. So I feel like I've been slunched this whole video. it's probably really noisy. People are going to be annoyed. Yeah, so OCD, as I was saying, so trigger, compulsion, intrusive thoughts. However, that's not, you could be somebody who is OCD, has OCD and only has the compulsions. You could be someone with OCD that only has the intrusive thoughts but don't need to do the compulsions. You can be someone with OCD that only suffers with a specific thing. For example, they might really struggle with believing that they are not believing so much, worrying about, say, their sexuality, which is one that a lot of people don't think has anything to do with OCD, but there is. There's a form of OCD that basically makes somebody unsure about their sexuality, even if they are sure, which doesn't really make sense. But they basically worry that what they believe is their sexuality and what they would like their sexuality bit to be is not their sexual orientation. Am I saying this right? Basically, in short, if you were a straight heterosexual man and you liked women, then you would know that you liked women, and you could even have a partner and know that you love that partner, know you find that partner attractive, but then you would have these constant intrusive thoughts that what if you are into men, what if you are gay? And it doesn't mean that you are against gay men or gay women or gay any against any gender. It's just that you know that you are straight and worry that you're not, if that makes sense. I'll go into more detail because I know that probably isn't making much sense, but I'll go into more detail when I go through the different kinds of OCD and the different intrusive thoughts, because this video has probably already been forever long. But yeah, so there's all different types of OCD, basically, is what I was trying to say. There's OCD known as pure O. There is some OCD, there's basically categories, subcategories, symptoms, triggers. Like some would say that my fear of sick is actually a subcategory of OCD itself, and there's a name for it. So many people who are scared of sick also have OCD, if that makes sense. So it's more of a subcategory, if I'm explaining that okay. Yeah, so basically you can probably tell from this video a lot more complicated when you start to dissect everything. I'm not even sure if this was a video that was even possible to follow. Hopefully it was, because I am just trying to raise awareness and show that OCD has a face. OCD is a normal thing. Well, not normal, because it's not, you know what I mean. I just wanted to basically raise awareness. I do have an Instagram page. I decided to start the Instagram page before YouTube. And again, that's just about raising awareness. And I've already had a few messages from people that really pushed me to start these videos, because I don't know if you can tell, but I am really nervous. But it was the messages and people saying about how their friends or family members have been affected by OCD, or about how they feel alone because nobody understands what they're going through, and other mental health issues as well. I just want to raise awareness around it all, really, but I'm starting primarily with OCD, just because I feel like it's one of the most misunderstood out of, well, it's possibly one of the most misunderstood anyway. So yeah, so I will let you go, but I am planning on doing more videos. So I was thinking of doing videos about the different types of OCD in more detail. I could even do like a series, because I could probably talk about each type of OCD for a full video in themselves, unless you ended up with a 3 hour long video. No one wants to sit through me for 3 hours. Also triggers, the different treatments. I'm just looking at my notes. Misconceptions, how to talk to someone who's got OCD, or if you're someone with OCD, how to talk to other people and explain to them, and just also in general, just day in the life with OCD. But if you do have any suggestions, please do leave any suggestions in the comment box down below. I will read them, and any videos that you like or any topics that you would want, even if they're not necessarily OCD related, just give me a shout in the comments box and I will definitely have a look. Also, if you wouldn't mind following me over on Instagram, my Instagram handle is OCD and me, so it's OCD AN me. And also, if you could just like the video if you liked it, obviously, and subscribe if you wouldn't mind, and then if you push the bell notification, and you will get notified when the next video is out. But if that's everything for now. Again, hope you're able to make it to the end of the video. If you could make it to the end of the video, write puppies in the comments section, and if you go over and do join me on Instagram, leave a little comment under one of the pictures and just say that you've come from this video. So again, thanks for watching and see you next time.